Kasora Komen College kabla seng haus nem syeja kendai sepak prapuar kelalong tang maka ka Komen College Hais Khasihel District kani kejaka puli kat nang mi kisnem kelanang kiu irat seprang bat dangsyen kalayo ya kakerdan B+ na kanak. Hapo kajialam jong i principal Dr. Elendo kani kejaka puli kala ai kejing syakri ya bun kisamla puli kathain sora syadu penusla shela bat kiwe khamtam kibawan na kilong yeng long sem kibaduk bat bam yo la bat puli ha kiwe kijaka puli hasor shelo haka arpo atrek uyayong araja arpo ka sora comment college lingba ka career guidance bat ka counseling committee kala pelong ya ka international workshop ka basisngi rengkat ka jinya trailang bat ka North East Slow Food Movement Naspa Shillong haka ba ka Charlotte Milk Bank kanong wat benia na Cambridge University England kelalong kanong keren bakongsan haka ni ka sngi Lasdang ya ka program da kejing keren piang subha na i principal i Dr. Elendo bat la penbuat da kejing ruai ya ka college anthem da kisamla puli layo ru ya kejing batai ya kejing temu jong ka program da i member secretary i kong Lucia M. Syndrome
alumni of the college and one of the leading entrepreneur of SORA this international workshop for Indigenous People's Food System organized by Career Counseling Guidance Committee. I also welcome the teachers and students of the college and everyone involved in the program. I would also like to inform the gathering out here that we have been affiliated with B+ by now. So once again, I welcome everyone. Good morning and good day.
La penya yaki program baru kawai da usar Klur Manix Assistant Professor History Department bat la penkut yak program da kijingkran ai kublai ya baru kibedon mentah kani ke program da i member secretary kong Lucia M. Syndrome.
So before we start, I would like to read out the objectives of today's program. The first objective is to generate awareness and interest among our student communities regarding the importance of local food systems in the context of climate change and biodiversity. We would also like through this program to build a cadre of local food youth enthusiasts that will promote and defend their own local food, to make our students aware about the importance of research and train them to be local researchers. And I hope we have here a resource person, Ms. Charlotte Milk who will work on this. And the last objective is to, last but not least, is to improve the employability skill of our students. And the expected learning outcome of this program is, as I mentioned, is to increase the partnership building between SORA Government College and Naspas in the areas of research and capacity building for our young people. On behalf of Naspas, and I will be sharing.
Haka technical session ka belingkong layo ya kejingkran na Miss Alitia Lendo ibadai Elite Associate of Communication Naspas ibadai tu halor kish hoteli kisnam kejing identity ka Naspas ban kentiu ya kejing bam tendrai. Ila pensyai ru bakawai na kilat panweng ya kijing jong kijing wam yok kam yok jam kisamla kalong lengba kejing sedang ya kijing tray ya kibedai bak kijing don kam kisnong kithau jongi ha kejuk kapor kibam don cingketa ya kamai mariam.
Will witness a celebration of the 10th anniversary throughout the year. So we were established in the year 2012 And stands for Northeast Slow Food and Agro-Biodiversity Society, and it is a non-profit, or in other words, non-governmental. Indigenous also acknowledges women as the backbone of almost all of our works. The recent works that we are focusing with women empowerment is to take forward this agenda to have women be included in the village councils, or what you call it.
So I'll call upon Ms. Charlotte to take the dais and give the presentation.
Haka session ka ba la yo ya ke jingkran na Emir Charlotte Milbank kawai na ki research scholar bapau ha Cambridge University England kabla tai ru bat ka UN halor ka phang Indigenous Peoples Food System, a game-changing solution in the context of climate change.
My name is Charlotte. I'm a PhD student in the University of Cambridge, and my discipline is in epidemiology and geography. And I've been working with Naspa. I've been working with Naspa here in Meghalaya since January this year, doing my research into wild foods and sustainable nutrition within Indigenous peoples.
Kami Charlotte kalabatai syai halor kaphang jong ki jingwat punya research kum kawai na kilat kamai jakpo ha ka ju ka por ban penroi ya ki jinglap jingsyam ki ban penmentoi ya kin try muluk try jaka. Shushu kami Charlotte kalabatai ya ka research ke jingwat punya jongka habun ki benta kum ke jingbam klau ki baladai hakikat tu kat nitli ki shnang hameklia kini ki jur klau ki kentum ya ki pasor kat ki terkhang ki jur thang ki jamerdo jaran jatira bat kiwei ki do klau bat kiwei ki bajudon bat bam da ki riulum ki jingmentoi bangiyo na kini ki jingbam bat ki jingkata na ki jingkala jong ka sen beneng ya kini ki jat jingbam.
And then in other sites, these wild foods might not be important dietary staples, but they might provide, important vitamins or minerals that help us to get a healthy body. So things like, your wild vegetables might help with anemia, or they might help with blood pressure, these things like that. And then finally, there are some communities for which these wild foods might be important at certain times of year. Maybe at times of year when you can't get as much other food, or if you're suffering a shortage of food for other reasons. So, for example, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people found that they couldn't get as much food as they normally would because the markets were shut. So these wild foods provided an important additional food source for them. But despite all this evidence we have around wild foods, there still is an absence of information on wild foods with regards to how they might contribute to sustainable food systems, and they are still absent from a lot of the policy discussions going on around food provisioning. Next. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about Indigenous people's food systems, something that obviously we have in Bolivia, Naspa is really, really devoted to. And on the topic of wild edibles, wild foods, Indigenous people's food systems have long incorporated wild foods into their diets and make use of hundreds of wild species that now in the Western diet we just don't consume anymore. And then globally, there is now growing recognition of the contributions of Indigenous people.
But belong kita di nongret di bala ban ri ban semua dunia di sembah dan kita di experience di jompi kila ban dunia dunia di piang but kila persang ru ban lia kita di eksperimen di jompi dan keba di persang ban lia ini di jing start tenrai ni hapan hikai di kena selah di jomi di badan habis nom di tahu jompi bagi lu ini tiklan ya kan ni di jing start tenrai di jomi but kila persang ban lia ini di school kerja Kumta hadi CDS tentang bạn hàng tu nghi lạ bạn ai chỉ nghi cay chỉ thân nạn bạn ý thụ ya nghi dạy sâm ban bạn nghi dạy chính không nghi qua bạn vấn đề ya cái này cái chính là từ trong đi pateng lah pateng akaba cái khun cái phi trong yêu nghi lạ bạn ya shik bạn ta karena makan ni kalau kau berperan kami kalau kami ini berkebah biasa dah kebangi belum jadi program kutu ni awak yang sampai ni ayu kalian nak tu satu jadi bak ketinggian kat tu baju kebangan ta kalau ba dikena samla di jumi kita bun kibala dunama di basi benta kalau jadi bak kalian kita nginong rep di jumi kibala penderkam yang kini program kemai dah kalau di sim yang kini sampai kemai dah kebagi penderkam dari semua tumbuh chemical nama bagi nong di jumi kilasau dan kam yang tak ada keba kinyo kambun bagi sungtu bagi ni kejing penderkam thamai di jumi kalak penyalam sa kejing ma nama ba kakta alu ya ka kuat kya kakta alu ya ka maria bat kumju ru aku ban penpau kani rapor ba nakaliang jo sarkar ba kani ban pendem sa di karanong rep tenrai jumi ba kini ban sim kalak karanti punno ban an bilat singaram na kabanta di je jo kinong rep di jumi bat nasungtu bagi nong rep di jumi dikendu sibun di je Kusa di dongkam gilat singaram ngakatu sabi para nong rep di jumi ba nidai ban ya trelang tang bani la ban kentiu ya kayo kakon kuat kerja bat ban penek pensa hentam ya ka kendo bat kamaryam kuliah sibun
Haka session kabalai layo ya kijingkran na Dr. B. Mauro Senior Associate Research and Knowledge Management Naspa Dr. Mauro ilapan ya kijingwat pnya jokki halo kijingbun jai kijai jingbam kum kijai khao jai so bat kiwe kibadon khajela jungi ila batairu babun naki kiladu jai no ila banjur ru ya kisamla pule bakin sautu ya kijingdon kam ban penne pensa ya kini kijingbam tenrai ki bratai shiwon ya kijingko jingkhia jungi kirulum
Nei yo kini shopping mango yo nei yo na Maharashtra boleh nangka pada transportation kalau abiam hendrei nang yo ru nang yo abiam hadu mentaru ki traditional food jadi mentara kile has orang
bat hakaju ko pola ala ru ya ki kena bat ki nong hikai ban keli jingkeli na ki jing ai jing hikai
Vegetables without any using the fertilizer.
Because they had a surplus of poison lying around because they were building this poison for using in the war. They couldn't use it. The products they had, the byproducts, all those other fertilizers and the pesticides, right? How did we grow our food before that? We grew our food. So that's the whole point is that our people, or not just our people, everywhere in the world, before the advent of industrial agriculture, they were growing their food using cow dung, using ash, because when you burn down the field in jungle, eventually what happens is that the ash acts, fertilizes the soil, and then you grow crop on them. So what we are asking from Naspa, especially from indigenous people system, is that please talk to the people. How did they grow something before fertilizers were there? Chemical fertilizers, before pesticides were there. Because these things, industrial farming is around 100 to 100 years old. Agriculture is 10,000 years old. How did we survive growing food for the last 9,800 years? And suddenly in 2,200 years, we have become unable to grow food if we don't use fertilizers or pesticides. So my only submission is this: we already have people here doing that. You can learn from them. The yield. You talk about the yield. The yield, you may think, okay, why? Because the yield grow with fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides very high. Now, what I want you to remember is that the green revolution was based on few crops, rice and wheat being very, very important. But the yield of rice and wheat has become stagnant. It is not growing anymore. What does it tell you? There is a limit. But what has happened because of using too much fertilizer, too much pesticide in Punjab? People have cancer because pesticide is a poison. If it's a poison for the plant, for the insect, it's poison for you also, right? So in that sense, because we are very lucky in Meghalaya, in Northeast, in many parts of the world, that we still have our traditional system, and we have been growing food for thousands of years without using any of these industrial farming methods. That's all. Thank you.
It's not about selling land. The point is about the policy of the government regarding agricultural land.
That's what I'm coming to that. Now, for example, in the land ceding policy, why is there no cadastral survey done in Meghalaya? We don't know who owns how much land. I don't know, you don't know. When we don't know, that's why all these big land owners, they come in like zamindars from the mainland, the way zamindars are in the mainland, They also have zamindars out here. Some clans own whole hills. There are villages out here who don't have any land of their own. But if the government does a cadastral survey, if the government brings a land ceiling policy, and it says, okay, and especially in the law is that you cannot divert agricultural land. If you want to divert agricultural land for development activities, it's very difficult. The Land Transfer Act is that government, central government. But here it's happening. So maybe the policy makers have to rise up, no? I mean, 76% of the population in Meghalaya is landless, and the government doesn't do anything about it. You have to push the government. And then when the government comes with the land policy, because land transfer policy in Meghalaya is meant to prevent alienation of indigenous land to non-indigenous people, right?
As Miss Charlotte. So Miss, I'm happy to see you here, especially doing your study here, especially your research. So, actually this question, all of us know, but we just want to ask from you. Since you are talking this morning about dhurkhalao and all wild foods and all, so can you just name some more plants that you have learned during your research?
Jamado, Jadi, Jakria, Jaren, Wan, Sia, what's that one? Yeah. Saint Sia, Turkang, that was in the book. Pashokat, Yankat, Shiakrot. I can do fruits as well if you want. Sokinpo, Sosha, Sola, Soshan, Sosho, Soflur. There's so many. I've been so impressed by the immense, the biodiversity in this area. It's like nothing I've seen before. It's really, really a biodiverse place that you live in. Yeah. Is it satisfying?
Yeah.
After watching that movie Contagion, so the people there have refrained from consuming fats. So can you enlighten us as regards the relation between this wild food and how it concerns our health?
Yes, I'm happy to talk a bit more about this because actually it's something that I didn't talk about today, but I am looking at it in my PhD research. Where to start? So sir, you're right that there are risks of disease from the consumption of wild animals, but actually when we look at the fraction of diseases that emerge from wild animals, and we look at the proportion that come from the consumption of wild meat, it's about 3% comes from wild meat. About 30% comes from other forms of agriculture, animal agriculture, so like domestic farming, so for example like domestic meat farming, cow, beef, pork, and the interactions of those domestic animals with wild animals. Other sources of emergence come from land use change, so for example as we cut down forests, as we convert the land for other uses, it brings people in touch with animals they wouldn't otherwise, and that causes the emergence of disease. So actually, whilst these documentaries, these reports, they focus so much on the risks of disease coming from bat consumption, from the consumption of other forms of wild meat, it's actually only caused by a tiny proportion. It's only causing a tiny proportion of all diseases. I think we just focus on it because it's not such a glamorous practice, like it's easy to point the finger and blame on. So that's one side of things.
Bat haka session ka basau layo ya kijingkren halor kapang kumnu ban sengkam lajong bat ap tang hi kam sorka na iba melkios riang wei na kisamla kasnong soara ubla treshdom bat ai nuksa halor ka sengkam bat ai kam de ya kiwei.
Bat lunch yang program ko pila man le online class. Online seminar, online assignment, online exam. Kakamber si pun siya kan ya kan ignu mo sa kay ignu kalau bila kuliah ni yen kuliah emtet kan kata online class online seminar kiyo jimot nak itu lecture dia kata kan kita tahu no Ndang ya ngapoi nang setuju kesangan sengaja. Ndang apa yang senang.
Iba Melkios ila penpejmat ya kikena dakaba ila batai ya bun kijai kam bakila ban sedang kum kakam tourist guide, software service, YouTube service, M-Bank service, event planner, hakabadon kijingye tho ne 𝐏𝐲𝐡𝐫𝐚 anniversary entertainment service ya kinong jo kai perthei bat kiwe.
Hakaju kapor bio kisah, hakaju kapor bio kisah, bio degree. Sesuai. Dia kata kejumut dalam ban. What ada kala complete biru soba ai. Kani ka kupor syaki. Para jumpi, para macam apa katam yang ting badan. Kejabian apa ham tam ban yang ha ban.
And on behalf of the committee, it would be an injustice if we fail to thank Sir Pius Rani, Pak Pius, the Executive Director of Naspa, for having so kind and having so generous to send the team to our college. After I've shared with him that as organizers, let me share with you, we face financial constraint. But he said, don't worry, we will collab with you and everything, don't worry about that, we are here to help you. So I would like to convey my gratitude to the Executive Director, Pak Pius. Actually, he's supposed to be here, but he has called me night before and he has informed me that he has to rush to Delhi for a very, very urgent meeting which he cannot attend himself. So and he is telling me he will be sending Ms. Alithia Lindo, one of the Ms. Faculty members, to replace him. So actually, it will be very, very helpful. It will be very useful to have about one of let us say one of the successful persons, say from Soara region. So Pius has been the executive director of Naspa, and I would like to tell my student friends he is now an international figure. I think Naspa is based in Rome, right? He has traveled all over the world. He has traveled to Sweden, he has traveled to Italy, Rome, Thailand, and he has been an international figure. Pius is from Nong Trao, a village student like you. I have known him, as I have mentioned in my introductory speech this morning, that he hailed from a rural village from Nong Trao. But I remember when I taught him as a member to voice, very hardworking and very dedicated, very responsible. So I think one day we will invite him to give a motivational talk to you so that you will all be inspired by his life journey. So I would like the team members to convey our gratitude to him for having shared this, for having so helpful to help us in this program. And on behalf of the committee, I would also like to thank our resource person, famous Charlotte Milbank, our PhD student in epidemiology and geography, University of Cambridge, England. And Pius has shared with me that your department has been the topmost department in Cambridge, if I'm not mistaken. So that's what he has shared with me, and he has talked a lot about you, about your country.
Kumbashi pasan pemut kini sebentar kibla yuk jemutoi na kani ka program.
We have been enriched, and it's like an eye-opener for us so that we will know our own richness, the rich resources that we have in our villages. Thank you very much.